City of Stevens Point Transportation Commission meeting, recorded January 10th, 2022.
We'll go ahead and get the meeting started unless you want to wait, Talon.
Nope.
Okay.
We're
Well then,
should be good.
okay. Well then I'll call the meeting to order. It's 4:45. We'll start off with roll call. I'll let you run that, Talon.
All right, sounds good.
Okay.
Alder Kneebone. I don't see Alder Kneebone.
No, I don't either.
Alder Christensen.
Here.
Greg Keppel.
Here.
Tom Bertram.
Present.
Carolyn Peterson.
Here.
And Nicole Lisney.
Here. Okay. We'll move to agenda item number 2, which is approval of the November 8th, 2021 minutes. Talon included that in the packet that got sent out earlier this week. Did anybody have any questions for Talon? Okay, sounds like none. I don't see any hands up either, so we can entertain a motion to approve those.
I'm Bertram will move to approve the minutes.
I'll second.
Go ahead.
Greg seconded.
Okay, so motion by Tom, second by Greg. Any further discussion or questions? Okay, hearing none, we'll take the motion to vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed? Okay, motion carries. Move to agenda item number 3, which is approval of the November and December 2021 financial claims report. So I just had a question about the bathroom rental. I think we've talked about this before, but that's check number 6520 to Schultz.
Yes, so that is it's a rental of a restroom downtown for our drivers to use. So, you know, it started over COVID with a lot of businesses kind of closing their doors, but really there's not a lot of facilities down there to use. The Children's Museum will let us use their facility if needed, but it's kind of sporadic on being open. So we are still renting that.
Is that a yearly payment or just a quarterly?
The monthly.
Okay.
We used to originally work with Shopko, so it was very convenient for the drivers. The biggest issue is getting something very close to the transfer center so they can only walk a short distance.
Yeah.
That way they get back on time.
Okay.
Bathroom.
Yeah.
They're lucky.
Yeah, it's not a great option, but
It is what it is.
yes, unfortunately. Drivers like it. They haven't. They're pretty happy that we at least provided something. We talked about places like the library and stuff as well, but once again, that's a little too far down for them. They usually just have a quick turnaround when they get downtown.
Okay. Any other questions on the 2 financial reports? Okay. Hearing none, we can entertain a motion to approve those financial claim reports.
Pearson also move.
I have a motion by Carolyn. Was there a second?
I'll second.
Was that you, Mark?
Yep.
Okay. Great, thank you. All right, any further questions or discussion? Okay, hearing none, we'll take the motion to the vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed? Okay, motion carries. We'll move to agenda item number 4, which is an update from the transportation superintendent.
Okay. So in our next few items are, informational, but just to kind of give you a brief update of where we are. We finished 2021 in an upward, I don't have the exact numbers in front of me for ridership, but in an upward trend on ridership. We actually finished with less ridership than 2020, simply because 2020, the first quarter, put it so far ahead of us for ridership, because we dipped down to like 25% of our ridership in March there when COVID hit. But we're definitely trending upward, which is good to see. We were down 2 driver positions. We just hired one driver, so he hasn't actually been officially hired yet, but which is good to see. We didn't have a lot of interest in the position, but he was a good candidate coming in. We've been kind of discussing staffing a lot, seeing potential staffing problems in the future, kind of just in the environment that we're in. So kind of floating around some ideas of restructuring bid routes and things like that. But just kind of preliminary. Right now, we're actually doing pretty good with staffing, only being down 1 driver. If this works out with this person that we hired. We're also down quite a few volunteers for our volunteer driving portion. So we were somewhere around 25 at the beginning of 2020, and now we're at 15. So that has a big effect on people looking for rides throughout the county and in the city, for people that are getting rides outside of the area with our volunteers. So that's all I really have for an update. I guess, one other thing is we've been meeting with people on campus a lot and kind of pushing for students to learn more and more about our services, going forward, that they're aware of them. Something that we've noticed is get on campus, ask a student, well, have you heard of the bus system? No, I've never heard of it, and it's free for students, and quite a few use it. So those efforts have definitely been reflecting in the numbers. We're definitely seeing on campus ridership rising and seeing different events go on that where people are promoting transit on campus. So that's what I have for an update.
Okay.
I guess if it's all right with you, Nicole, I'll move on to the next couple items.
Okay, sounds good.
So the 5310 grant award is for our mobility management and our volunteer services. So mobility management is being funded at 100% this year. We were awarded that, which is good. It was around 98% last year, so we're seeing that increase.
That's good.
And then the volunteer operating portion is being funded at 50.5%, and that was around 48% last year too. So we're seeing a raise in that funding. That volunteer, the other portion of it, is mostly funded by in-kind, by the volunteer drivers donating their hours to the program. So that's both great things to hear. And then the 8521 grant award was awarded at $182,310. That also goes to our local portion of funding these programs. So that was great too, a slight increase over last year, but it's being funded at 100%. So we were awarded those two. Our big one, our 5311, we won't hear about for a little while. The state is trying to or with that at the state level, is trying to get their hands on some of the ARPA funds that are out there to try to see something like 2021 where our operating was funded at 100%, but being held up in the political level, we probably won't hear about that until the late spring. So that's what I have for those two.
Okay, so we can move on to agenda item number 7, discussion on transportation gaps and system improvements.
So to kind of get started on that, and really to be an open-ended thing, you know, we come up with a lot of ideas internally, but definitely want to hear from you guys and people in our community about, you know, what gaps you see and what we need to improve on. This right away in January here, we're starting to work on implementing a new app that gives live bus tracking. That's going to be a big deal for our system, just that the public's going to be able to know when the bus is going to get there. It'll be a good tool for promoting our system. And then really looking at infrastructure as well, because we have kind of some things floating around at a state level for funding and at a federal level for funding infrastructure. So some things that we're looking at is signage, maybe electronic signage, shelters, other technology, and then a transfer center downtown. So Greg kind of emailed me for an update, and there was a piece in the Stevens Point Journal. What's kind of interesting about that, or kind of cool about that, is internally we started to discuss the need for a transfer center downtown. If we want to add any other routes, there's not space downtown. It's not a dedicated space for people. There's no heated shelter. There's no restrooms. So those were the big needs that we were seeing. So in working with community development, they found this grant opportunity. And that's kind of where we are, just waiting to hear back from their grant. There's not a lot put into the planning of the exacts of what would be involved with the transfer center. You know, nobody's engineered a building or anything like that to put there for us, but we're definitely involved in it and talking to Ryan over at Community Developing. And that being said,
I have a tiny bit I can add to that as well, because that's all part of that Shopko redevelopment. That was one of the components, because transportation was one of the things that they were looking for as a component of that grant proposal. So I know the transfer station has been part of it. The footprint and stuff is there. I know you're right. The building hasn't been designed yet. The frustrating part is originally we were told that we would hear on it by early December. December has come and gone. I don't know if they're waiting to hear from DC if there's going to be more money available, and they don't want to turn people down if they possibly have more money coming. But I know Ryan's been calling around to see if anybody else has heard of the status of their grants too, and nobody's heard anything yet. So we're kind of in the same boat as everyone, just sitting back and waiting. But I do know that the transfer station was a key component of that whole redevelopment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I guess I just wanted to talk about that a little bit, and would hope that, and I understand when you're writing for grants, et cetera, you know, it's hard to disclose things and get ahead of the process. But, you know, being on the transportation committee, I would think that we gain a little bit of insight, maybe a little bit before things just show up in the general media. It left me flat-footed, and then I began to wonder, since we had no discussion about it, you know, I want to make sure that, you know, we're really putting our best foot forward, and we aren't, you know, padding some type of a grant opportunity, and that we think that the need is real, and that we can really truly rationalize and justify the request and the action. And I would have appreciated a little bit of discussion about that ahead of time.
I think in a ideal world that definitely would have happened. I know the guidance from the state for the grant showed up about 12 days prior to when the grant had to be submitted. And so that's why there really wasn't the opportunity to have a whole lot of discussion. It was really put all the communities in Wisconsin kind of behind the 8 ball. They had to get a lot of stuff done in a they basically did about 3 months worth of work in about a 2-week period of time. But they were able to get, I think a pretty solid proposal put together. I think they had done some preliminary work, and then when they got the actual guidance, there were things in there that hadn't really been talked about prior to. So that's why originally transportation, I don't think, was one of the targets of the grant, and that changed. So then it seemed to be a logical thing, since they knew the need was there, and that was something that was one of the desirable components of a grant. That's why it came about in a very quick fashion, but that wasn't really through any fault of community development. That was because of the timeline that was imposed by them, by the state. So I think there were extenuating circumstances in this case.
Yeah. And well, I appreciate that explanation, Mark, and that insight. Thank you. That's very helpful to me. Thank you.
Okay, good.
Colin, we have like it's either a 4-year plan or a 5-year plan. That includes some information about the transfer station downtown, doesn't it?
The TDP does, and
Yeah.
I don't have the exacts on that right now. But yeah, the TDP, it definitely has some goals and some ideas in there for the transfer center.
Okay.
And this was more of a community development, plan. It was, actually big compliment to community development for working with other departments to kind of put something together last minute. So, that's kind of where we want to be with transportation is working with other departments, partnering to get things done. So we're seeing that more and more, I feel like. So, but yeah, I mean, we can definitely get that information, and I still think, regardless of what happens with the grant, the need is still there. So, to look at less expensive options, maybe to look into other grants that can be directed through transportation and with that. That's what discussions like this are about. So that's good.
How much longer is our TDP good for then, Colin? Do you know?
This is the last year. Oh,
2020.
Sorry. 2023 is the TDP. I think of this as the last year because I have to start working on it. So,
yeah.
But yeah, it does go through 2023.
Okay.
Something else that we've been talking about a lot is the possible addition of another route. So there's obviously a lot of things that go into that with timing and actually some things that have been approved before by the Transportation Commission, like service to the Marshfield Clinic, things like that need to be considered. But the timing's pretty good on making a new route. So the earliest I could see that happening is this summer, but just something we're bouncing around ideas about, something that I wanted to talk about a little before we started putting information out to the public, things like that, to get input.
Do we have enough buses for another route, or do we have to get more?
Yeah, we wouldn't have to get more buses. We're well within the spare ratio to operate another full-time route. Staff, you know, you want to look at just the way the staffing is in today's market, but also just that balance of having enough to start a new route without putting too much of a strain and to be able to wait to hire new people. So all things that we're considering. So we're kind of getting together a plan right now to add one, and so I just don't want anybody to be surprised when that shows up, for you guys to start looking at it. So. I have a couple other just goals that I have written down is participating in more special events. So the reasoning behind this is, like, our ridership won't always come to us. Sometimes we have to see the need in the community and go to the ridership. So stuff in Stevens Point revolves around UWSP with homecoming, things like that are big events. So if there's anything that you can think of, let us know. One thing we're kind of pursuing right now is getting involved with the PGA. I know there's going to be a lot of new people in town, and wanting to see, they're going to have to park somewhere, they're going to need transportation somewhere, and you know, we're not Green Bay, we don't have football games every Sunday to boost up our ridership, but or Milwaukee with the Bucks, but if the senior PGA comes to town, we should probably have some public transportation available. So that's something that we're working on. And I think that's all I had.
So has Century reached out to you about that then?
Yeah, actually, we're meeting with them tomorrow, so.
Ah, okay, good. Okay, does anybody else have anything for agenda item number 7? Okay, hearing none. Agenda item number 8 is the announcement of the next meeting. That'll be February 14th at 4:45. And we are adjourned. Thanks everybody for calling in today and participating. And for those of you who traveled in the cold, thanks for doing that.
Everyone stay warm.
Yeah, have a good month. Stay warm, stay safe.
A video of this meeting is available for viewing on the city's website, stevenspoint.com/videos.